Thank you very much for this charming introduction, and it's an honor and a pleasure to be here this morning at Serbia Investment Ready. What a wonderful title for a conference. It's a bold statement, and I think that's what we like. Let me give you a brief introduction to what Mountain Partners is and what we're doing. We also were a startup company. We also had business angels, and the founder of Mountain Partners, Dr. Birch, my colleague, who cannot be here today, started a company in the 90s. He had a first, how does it work here? Let's do it like this. Okay. He had a first company called ACG, and he made a very successful IPO. And what we see is there's only certain exit windows. And when you start a company, as an entrepreneur, you have to think about how to make money for yourself, but also for your investors. And the purpose of starting a company is to make money, to grow the company, and eventually to sell it. It's not always possible to sell companies. It's a very cyclical market out there, and you have to give thought to what you do and when you can do it. We found in our investment scheme there is a pattern. And like every 6 years, it looks like we have a chance to bring companies to the public to sell portions of it. But the rest means you have to stick with your investments, you have to keep building, you have to keep financing it. And believe me, most of the business plans that we see and the ones that we invest in change. And they're subject to change. Okay, so it's like a brain surgery. You open the brain, there's always a surprise. But you cannot stop. You have to complete what you started. Okay, so when you make that decision, make it not alone, make it as a team, and make it with good investors. What you see is as a second wave of investments, we always invest in situations when nobody has the guts to invest, when everyone thinks, okay, this is the end of the world, it's over, let's go home and build acres with potatoes maybe, but I tell you, this is the time to start a company. So now in the middle of the crisis, this is the time to start because there's so many opportunities out there. It doesn't mean you're automatically successful. There's a lot of work and there's a lot of dedication that is required. But with the support of experienced entrepreneurs, you can succeed. We are somewhere at the year 2011, and we just had an IPO at the New York Stock Exchange for one of the companies that we funded 2 weeks ago. That was probably the last IPO we're going to see this year, and it was so-so. It was a little shaky, to be honest. But it's very important to identify and allocate all your resources to that. Okay, how can we contribute here? As you see, we are growing internationally into areas of growth. And the strategy that we found is when a business model is successful in the internet situation, for example, a fast-growing company, then we have to take this model and to other markets where growth is, where there's a need for that offer. And that what we did in Germany successful, we have been taking to China, which was extremely successful. We have been taking it now recently to Brazil, and we're about to negotiate a deal with India. Yesterday evening, we had a nice meeting, and we spoke about how to cooperate here in Serbia and the greater region of Serbia with the same exact model. I just flipped through this very quickly so you get an impression how we built the group and how we did it. Basically, we have a couple of venture funds that are dedicated to certain sectors and or areas. And at the very right, we help other companies to find financing because we have a very large and vast network. And that is my area of responsibility, all these corporate finance activities. Mountain Partners has various investments vehicles. One company that we founded, Identif Group, in the field of RFID and security, that is really our home turf. We founded 4 years ago. It's a normal Swiss company. It's now Nasdaq traded and has a capital value of about 150 million. So it's possible to build fast-growing companies if you do things right. But you have to have all the ingredients together, and the most important ingredients is not money, as you might think. It's the entrepreneur. It's always the team. If you have a mediocre product and a great team, you can bring it to a success. If you have a wonderful product and a not so good team, guess what? You have to change the team as an investor. It's really all about that. So don't stop learning, don't stop questioning also yourselves. This is the portfolio we have today. I don't want to get into this in detail, obviously. We could spend all day on this. But what is funny is there's the crisis out there. There's many things out there that say, okay, the economy stops. But we have at least 10 companies now in the sales process to large corporations who missed the internet presence of their companies. And that's mainly in the field of media and also in the field of commerce. It's very, very interesting how much money they have and how much they missed the boat, and that is the opportunity when you can bring in and sell innovative startup companies that are not so small anymore to them. Exits from the past, I will just skip over it, but believe me, we have been successful, otherwise I could not afford being here today. But honestly, not everything that you're doing is successful. As an investor, it's very important to diversify your investments and not bet on one horse only. Because even if the planning was good, there's always a surprise, as I said. So diversify and just invest not in your region, try to spread it, try to do things together with others. Now, having said all that, how do we organize that? In the past, we invited people to co-invest with us because we have a very vast network of investors internationally. But it was always, you know, we were hosting conventions like these people were meeting, and they made big business. And we maybe got a bottle of wine or a thank you note, and we ultimately said we should be part of that. We should be creating a platform for people to meet, how to collaborate together successfully. But then we want to be participating in that. We want to help this to happen. We want to help entrepreneurs finding the right investors for their business. But this cannot be done, you know, just socially. We did it for a lot of time, but then you start to lose the grip. So you must create a system or a model where you are financially independent. And that means this has to be run as a profit center. This has to be a successful startup in itself. S-Bahn has to be able to finance itself from and without of their own activities. If you just contribute of your wealth, you lose the grip. And I think this is what I want to share with you today. So what is Mountain Club? Mountain Club basically tries to provide an answer to what we call the equity gap. You get some funding in the very beginning of a company, of an idea, you know, some 10,000, 20,000, 50,000 euros maybe. But then you end up in a gap in a field where there's no venture capital. Sometimes you get some money from the state out of a program, you get started. But how do you cross this equity gap? Typically, this is too large for individual angels. So you kind of have to group angels around you and syndicate them. And this is what Mountain Club tries to do. Sorry, this is probably not very good to be read, but the problem of business angel investments is the following. They're very regional. Typically, angels are successful investors, so they tend to reinvest into the area of expertise that they have. But this means it's also, how shall I put it, a monocolored portfolio approach. If you have been a successful entrepreneur in the Basel area in medtech field, the likelihood that you're going to invest in the greater Basel area in medtech is very high. But statistics have shown that is not necessarily the best way to invest your monies. So don't regionalize too much. It's important to be present and to understand what you're doing, but it's also important to spread widely enough over sectors and situations. But how can you do it without doing it blindly? Well, first message, don't go alone. Don't invest just by yourself. It's important to fly together, and obviously it should be in the same direction. Otherwise, you have trouble later on. So find the right people when you're looking for an investment to co-invest with. Particularly, we call people who start investing virgin angels, people who have maybe been great managers and entrepreneurs, are not necessarily good investors. You also have to learn this. So go with experienced people, very importantly. Where do you meet those people? Well, on conferences like these. We also host conferences. It's very important to meet people in person. You have to build trust. You have to look each other in the eye. You have to shake hands. You have to share a beer and a crack a joke maybe together. It's important. You can do a lot of things online, but it's important to be exposed to input, so to say. Now, what we found is to emulate venture capital-like investment sizes, it's very important to have a lead investor that has expertise and knowledge in the area of the investment you're making. And expertise as an investor. So he should analyze the deal, he should negotiate the term, and he at least should take 25% of the current round, the deal's terms of which he negotiated by himself. Only then that's credible. If you have a professor who writes a nice note and says, yeah, I think this is great technology, that's nice. But you have to have someone who has, as we say, beef in the game or skin in the game. Then we distribute the rest on so-called tickets, and we syndicate those tickets so the lead investor represents the co-investors in the shareholder meeting. That does not mean you're absolutely passive, but it means you are coordinated and efficient. For the entrepreneur receiving your funding, it's very important that he doesn't have a zoo of investors and everyone has a different idea, but there's someone who's responsible, there's someone who cares. It's also important because you just don't want to deliver your money and then not hear about them. So follow an experienced leader is certainly great. We had this experience again this morning. We were trying to walk over from the hotel, following directions, and we got astray. But we made it. So we're here safe and sound. But it was a nice walk around Belgrade. So another practical example how important that is. So our deals that we present on our platform, and I'm coming to that in a second, they're only there with the lead investor. So we're not a graveyard of business plans. There's plenty out there. Only when you have someone who already committed funding, our members will see the deal. That means very often within 4 weeks, we can complete such a round. So example, the company is looking for 1 million euro, the lead investor commits 250, we can complement the remaining 750 very often on one event or following an event, typically within 4 weeks. That's unheard of. Normally it takes you 3 to 6 months to complete such a financing round. Once you delivered your funds, you're happy not to receive your shares. Typically, you get the next call of these companies when they need your money again. We try to avoid that. We try to implement a reporting that is responsibility for that is the lead investor, and it's distributed over the platform amongst the shareholders. It's very important to understand what's happening with the company because sometimes they're in trouble and they don't even recognize it. So you need to understand by sharing the numbers on a regular basis, how are things developing? Do I have to intervene or is it running okay? And typically when they have good news, they share it with you. When they have bad news, they try to hide it. And that's bad. It should be the other way around. When there's a problem, get together with your angels, solve it. Don't hide it. Share it, be open, be transparent. This is the only way how you can create trust. If you try to, solve it yourself, you may take the wrong decisions. At least they're not, guided or supported by your angels. So this is how colorful such a portfolio of an investor should look like. Of course, everyone likes real estate maybe or so, but you should not put everything in one asset class. I'm not saying put all your funds and your wealth in venture capital. I'm not saying that. No, certainly not. But a reasonable proportion, we always refer to it as a core and satellite strategy. So the core of your wealth should probably be invested into, well, what's risk-free these days? Currencies? Not so sure. Real estate? We had a crisis recently about real estate. So think, don't trust anyone else, a banker or so. Think by yourself, what is good for you? Talk to other investors. What do they do? Get advice. And I can only say one thing. The venture capital or business angel capital asset class was not correlated to all the crises that we've seen there. We were not affected a little bit because private angels did not invest anymore. But the value of our company was not affected. They did a good job. They grew their business independent of markets being in trouble or so. So very important message. Diversify over sector, investment phase, country, and risk level. This is what we did. We raised funds in excess of 70 million for over 20 companies in the last 18 months or so. And this is how successful the system works. Not all those companies were startup companies. I was questioned this morning earlier. There were two larger enterprises. As I said, we had an IPO and a pre-IPO situation. But the majority is early stage and startups. And they have been, through our system, built an exposure to an investor circle. Many of them said, okay, I'm not investing this round, but maybe in the next round. Or I don't want to invest, but I take you to a strategic investor that I know of for whom this is really great. So that's how angel investments should work. Well, of course, we had one very nice example where no one invested. And the company was from abroad, it was Chinese, and it was our first convention. We had a video of the company, we had a bad telephone line, didn't work the other way. So we presented this company, valuation was at 3 million, we were looking for 1 million equity. No one invested, this was May 2010. We found the million in December 2010. The million was invested from our circle. Valuation had slightly changed. We were now talking about 120 million in valuation. The next financing round, 1 year later, took place in May this year, 1.2 billion. So bad investment decision not to invest, but we have, a full room of missed opportunities and deals. The company is called Lashu. It's basically the Groupon play in China. So this is also happening, and you just have to very openly talk about it. We were, with one of our funds, luckily enough, we were part of that. So as I said earlier, it's very important to meet in person, but then typically when you do an angel investment, there's a lot of work that you need to do. You have to go to the notary, you have to receive papers, you have to carry home business plans. Our investors typically don't sit at their desks. They're world travelers, they're on a yacht, they're skiing, they're doing whatever they're doing, they run their business maybe. So for convenience reasons, it was very important for us to create an online tool that will help them to have everything at their fingertips whenever they need to and whenever they want to. And we did this successfully. And the change that we created is basically now we have a regular and supranatural or international deal offering. We have various sources because we don't need to be expert ourselves. It's the lead investor that takes the role. We have always a very good and specific analysis and due diligence and a reporting after investment. And from the day one, this is geared to an exit situation. This is just some snapshots how the platform looks. I don't have the time to show it live to you, but I'm happy to do so in the coffee break maybe. You log yourself in, you see a blind teaser if you're not an accredited member. You can see all details and documentation of the company, including videos, all formats that you can think of. And then you can subscribe online for a ticket. It's like an e-banking process. We do this together with UBS Bank, so all the money handling is done by them. And it's like funds are booked to an escrow account, and once the deal closes, the funds are released to the target, and the share settlements are created and brought back to the investor. We take care of all of that, meaning the workload on the individual investor is very low, and that's important because you have to have at least 10 investments, but as a single investor you can only take care of maximum 5. So we found a tool how to overcome that. Why is that important? It's nice that we have it, but what does it have to do with you? We want to share this software. We're not a software company, so we don't want to sell it. But we have been speaking to various angel clubs who said, cool, can I have this tool? And we said, yes, you can. And you can have it for free because we cannot do business here in Serbia, for example. That can the guys from S-Bahn do, Alexander and his colleague, Dusan. So we need someone who speaks the language, who understands the local market. We can provide the tool. And if a local deal is co-funded by our investors, we will have a fee sharing because there is a success fee if you create a funding. That's how we operate profitable, and that's why it is important to have such a scheme implemented. And in the middle of that, in the end, will be a trading platform for secondaries, because it's great to be an investor, but it's even better to make money on it and to get out of these investments. And as we've seen in my first slide, many of the investments take years before you can realize an exit. But sometimes you need money in between. So the idea is to create a platform to trade these tickets, as we call them, between angels internationally in order to allocate a right and balanced portfolio. And this is currently working. That's what we're working on. The effect will be that one network partner, say S-Bahn, identifies a deal, he co-funds the deal locally, but then he internationally opens the deal for other investors, which is also good for the companies, because now they very easily can access the other markets. And that creates a lot of benefits and reduces the cost because now it's scalable. You don't have to do everything locally, manually. It's scalable, it's reliable. And that's, in the end, how things can look like when we have various satellites, like the Mountain Club, so we will become a satellite ourselves, and in the middle will be private equity exchange called Peaks. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm happy to take questions if need be. Thank you. Any questions? No? No entrepreneurs here who want to start a company, please.
Sorry, from a legal point of view, because more or less you're trading future securities.
Yeah?
How you're dealing with that?
A very good question. Two things. For us, it's very important that we only have so-called qualified investors. That means you have to have a certain wealth to participate as a member of the Mountain Club. And secondly, it's not a public offering, it's a closed user group. So everyone becomes a member, everyone signs a contract. We currently have like 70 members on the Mountain Club platform. But every local ban that will share this can do the same thing. So it's not, but you're right. When we speak about the peak solution, you're absolutely right. We're now in discussions with various supervisory bodies of banking systems, like in Switzerland and other places, in Luxembourg. And this is something we definitely have to identify, and it's possible because it's a closed user group. But very good question.
This is okay. The reason why the next question is you're talking about qualified investors. For example, quite a lot of Italian municipalities, they had help from investment banks, and now they're suing them because of swap contracts.
Yeah.
This sounds like a devil, and if I remember well, now the certain line between qualified investors and the rest of the public is going up much, quite a lot.
We are trying to, sorry, that's my reminder that my speak should be over by now. In Switzerland, the qualified investor means you need to have 2 million Swiss francs in liquid assets. So it's different than in the European Union, where you only have to invest 125 euros and then automatically you're a qualified investor. I think it's very, very important not to try doing crowdfunding here, because you're absolutely right. You open a legal gray area, let's say, at least. Plus, I believe it's very important that small savings accounts do not invest in this asset class, because a lot can go wrong, and we have to be very clear and open about it. You know. Thank you for your question.
I have one basically question. What was the reason for you to coming to Serbia? Are you planning to coming to Serbia? What was the positive reason, and what is a risk for you? How do you see the risk here to invest?
Well, no risk for now, and because I have been invited very nicely to this conference, so it was a very safe travel. And as I hear, Belgrade is a very safe city. So I took some nice walks yesterday and today. I did not invest yet in Serbia. We're looking at opportunities, but we're just in the middle of starting potential negotiations. But for us, the exposure is very, very limited, because we will have a local partner to work with, and that always has been our principle and concept. We cannot go into a foreign country and think we know better. That's certainly not the case. We know probably some things that we want to bring with us and that we want to invest as a investment in kind, which is our knowledge and know-how. But we always need local partners, and ideally it's a local successful entrepreneur who has been investing, because he knows his ways. We did this successfully in China. We did this now successfully in Brazil, and why not over here? So for now, no risk. But thank you, Dr. Letter.
Is there any minimum financial threshold in your investments below which you wouldn't allow people to invest?
A very good question. Typically, it depends on the deal size and the decision of the lead investor. The ticket size that we try to implement as a minimum size is around 50,000 euro. We did also like 30,000 euro decision, but then typically the total amount that we're collecting is too small. Typically, we start our activities when we are looking for €500,000 or so. In rare cases, when it's more or less a done deal, we can do a little less, but that's where we try, okay, this is relevant for us. And then it should be not more than 10 tickets. That doesn't mean you necessarily have 10 different shareholders, because one can also buy more than one ticket. So typically we see in this investment size 3 to 4 people sharing such an investment. But thank you.
Okay, we have time for just one more question. Andrea.
And I'm here for the coffee break, so if you want to approach me afterwards, I'm happy. Thank you very much for your attention. It was a pleasure being here. Thank you.